As the Victorian government's debt soars to astronomical levels, it's still reaching for the stars.
Capsule pressurized, clear for launch.
Despite being cash-strapped, it managed to find $37 million to invest in a US stratospheric exploration company that also spooks space tourism.
Well, yeah, I'm sure Victorians would rather have that than a new hospital.
We're trying to be the Elon Musk of Australia now.
We like to call it the balloon doggle because it's such a silly idea that you're going to generate an economic windfall from this sort of pie in the sky.
Worldview's grand plan is to launch near-space tourist flights from the Great Barrier Reef and other places around the world from 2026. It's yet to gain regulatory approval, but you can pay a $500 deposit to reserve a $50,000 ticket.
We're designing 7 spaceports around the world in what we call 7 Wonders of the World Stratospheric Edition.
The company makes high-altitude balloons that provide on-demand, high-resolution sensing, weather monitoring and communication services for commercial and government clients. The cash injection was made through the state government's controversial investment fund, Breakthrough Victoria, just days before the Treasurer announced his 10th budget.
Playing venture capitalist is not what we expect state governments to do. And for a state government that is under so much financial pressure as Victoria specifically now is, it does seem like a luxury the state can ill afford.
Breakthrough Victoria was set up in 2021 by then Premier Daniel Andrews. The $2 billion taxpayer investment fund attempts to pick winners in the hope of getting a return. Former Labor Premier John Brumby is the chair.
Premier and the Treasurer were very keen to do something big, really big.
Earlier this year, there were calls to shut down the fund because of the risk, a lack of transparency around investment decisions and when taxpayers will get a return. It's also been criticised for the large number of staff it employs, 52, and a CEO who gets paid more than the Premier.
Complete waste of money, should have been shut down a long time ago, shouldn't have started.
The Treasurer is the sole shareholder and the fund is not subject to freedom of information requests. Tim Pallas remains convinced it will play an important role in growing Victoria's economy.
If you want to see innovation, if you want to see governments go down the path of effectively trying to facilitate business, this is not a new concept. This is almost a direct lift from Temasek, which is the Singaporean Intervention and Equity Fund.
Singapore can afford to do this because it is running enormous budget surpluses, as a result of which it has cash that it needs to invest. Whereas Victoria is running enormous budget deficits and has debt that it needs to service. It's not in a position to be playing games with taxpayers' money in the way that Singapore can do.
Matt Berryman heads up his own venture capital fund and invests in the same space as Breakthrough Victoria.
The government are not experts in venture capital. That is not the government's responsibility.
As part of Worldview's deal with Breakthrough Victoria, the company has promised to create 200 jobs in the state to build stratospheric balloons largely used for imaging and surveillance.
I would not be holding my breath for this to turn into the next big thing.
What was your reaction when you heard the Victorian government had put $37 million into Worldview?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that the government is investing taxpayer money in any private business.
Worldview captured US headlines in 2017 when one of its balloons blew up.
It was a testing accident at Worldview Enterprises, the Tucson company that flies balloons to the edge of space.
Worldview apologised for the explosion at its headquarters in Pima County, Tucson, Arizona.
By mid-afternoon, workers were gathering up the remains of the plastic balloons Worldview uses to lift instrument packages to the edge of space.
Timothy Sandifer is from conservative US think tank Goldwater Institute, which successfully sued Pima County over its $15 million investment in Worldview.
We sued the county for devoting taxpayer money to what they admitted was basically being an angel investor to this business, and we ended up winning. The court declared that the arrangement was basically a handout of government money to a private company and was unconstitutional.
Worldview failed to deliver on its promise to Pima County that it would generate 400 jobs. As a result of the legal action, it's renegotiated its deal with the county. In the latest Victorian budget, $360 million was trimmed from Breakthrough Victoria over the next 4 years. But the life of the fund was extended from 10 to 15 years.
The fees will continue to get paid to the bureaucrats and ex-politicians, but actually investments will slow down, but the money's still been committed. That should have come back to the people.
Economists say the latest budget hasn't done enough to rein in Victoria's soaring debt, which is expected to hit $188 billion by 2028.
Well, what it means in practice is that it is spending money on interest, money that's getting close to $10 billion per annum by the end of the 4-year forward estimates period, that could otherwise be spent on hospitals, schools, community protection, policing, and other things that Victorians value.
Matt Berryman recently resigned as chair of Mental Health Australia. He is scathing about Victoria's decision to delay the rollout of mental health centres.
They've walked back from the promises that they made to the people about their health and wellbeing. We're seeing more mental health concerns, appearances in emergency departments, crisis teams being called out to homes. It's become a national, health crisis.
The budget cut $23 million for cancer research, while key commitments like the Melbourne Airport rail link and mental health services have been delayed. Victoria is the highest tax state in Australia and has the biggest debt.
Victorians are going to have to accept that an increased proportion of the taxes they pay and of the grants that come to Victoria from the federal government are going to be used to pay interest on that debt rather than to fund services that people expect their state governments to provide.
Despite some cuts, it's business as usual at Breakthrough Victoria. The fund and the Treasurer once again declined 730's request for interview. Worldview also said no, saying it didn't want to put the company in a challenging position. In a statement, the company said establishing a second headquarters in the Indo-Pacific was of significant strategic importance. It says it's already hired some staff in Melbourne. In the US, Worldview celebrity spokespeople continue to sell the space tourism dream, like Adrian Grenier from the early 2000s comedy drama Entourage.
Boom! I want you to star in it. Whatever I do next, I also want to direct.
And it's so exciting because I get to be their chief Earth advocate.
What does that mean?
It means I get to welcome people back down to Earth and then allow them to rediscover their relationship to the planet.
While the company says it's launched more than 100 successful unmanned flights since 2012.
Launch systems are a go. Digestive systems.
Affirmative, Colonel. Digestive systems are go.
After a decade, Worldview hasn't delivered on its promise of space tourism for people just yet.
We have liftoff.
But in 2017, a chicken burger made history when it toured the stratosphere on one of Worldview's balloons.